What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, it was certainly an interesting weekend after Pokemon Scarlet and Violet released on Friday. There have been a bunch of videos showcasing bugs and glitches that have just gone absolutely viral online. But outside of that, we may have at least discovered one part of the game that's causing frame rate issues and maybe how you can fix it. We'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Team Ninja and some potential reboots that they have been discussing for some of their bigger franchises, one of which has me pretty excited. And we'll also be talking about Black Friday and Sony, as they did reveal several discounts for their hardware and software. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with one of the strangest headlines of the year. We're just going to go over to it. You can see it here. This is over on VGC. Former Sonic team head and Sonic the Hedgehog programmer Yuji Naka has reportedly been arrested in relation to the ongoing Square Enix insider trading investigation. This appears to center around a developer called Aiming. And what we have are three different individuals, one of them being Yuji Naka. However, the other two invested over $330,000 into Aiming, seemingly just before it was announced that Aiming would be working on a new Dragon Quest game. I believe that's Dragon Quest Tact, but you kind of line that up and you're like, wow, that's very, very convenient that they would invest that kind of money just ahead of that announcement that would obviously drive up the stock price. So there's going to be questions and now arrests being made here. And Yuji Naka apparently invested $20,000 in, and well, they're checking him out now too. So we'll see how this continues to unfold, with Yuji Naka being arrested for insider trading over a Dragon Quest game. Certainly not something I had on my bingo card for 2022. Also, we do know that there is an AEW game coming out called AEW Fight Forever. It'll be good to have another wrestling game outside of the WWE 2K series, if nothing else, just for added competition. But it looks like there has been a change that many fans have noticed. At the end of their latest trailer, you can see it does appear that CM Punk has been removed from the front, where before he was like dead center there. Not anymore, and this appears to be on the heels of, well, wrestling getting a bit too real, I guess, at AEW in the locker room, and well, now he's been basically removed from the promotion and the company, and I think they're working out some sort of contract buyout. At least it's been the talk. So yeah, in that case, they're not going to have him on a game that's most likely coming out next year. Considering we're into the back half of November and still no announcement, I would look towards first half of 2023 for this one to come out, and most likely, that's right, no CM Punk on the front cover. Oh, and we did have a bit of an announcement, I guess, for a Kickstarter that didn't necessarily promote that Kickstarter as much as remind us that Nintendo still has a game that's shelved right now, which we can see the tweet here. This was posted up by Warside saying a new pixel art turn-based tactics game we've been working on, and yeah, it looks almost exactly like Advance Wars from the Game Boy Advance, but what this has done now is it reminded people that Advance Wars Reboot Camp is still just kind of sitting there. We know Nintendo delayed it indefinitely earlier this year, and it hasn't really been talked about ever since. So now, with this being shown, it reminded people about that, and there's been questions asked, okay, what's going on with Advance Wars, and when is it coming out? It's still coming out, right? Like that's the thing. We don't know at this point. Advance Wars isn't going to be a big seller for Nintendo, and they're obviously trying to navigate the PR landscape with this one, with current world events. So I don't know when Advance Wars comes out, but this game is supposed to be set for 2023, and it would certainly be weird if this kickstarted Advance Wars Game Boy Advance type game comes out before Nintendo's big Advance Wars Reboot Camp revival. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. After releasing on Friday, there's a lot of talk around the state of the game and how it's been delivered, with issues for frame rate and obviously a lot of bugs and glitches and just weird things that are happening in Game Freak's first big push into an open world Pokemon game that clearly needed a bit more time. For example, you just search on Twitter, you'll find them all over the place, and they are being retweeted and liked and pushed everywhere. Like, you can see characters falling through the floor that just outright, you just kind of walk around, maybe you jump down off a ledge and boom, you fall right through into the abyss. There's also times where it looks like your Pokemon just kind of gets thrown out of their ball for a battle and then they fall through the floor. And this has gone viral in Japan and basically everywhere else. And obviously we know Pokemon, very popular there in Japan, but every time these different tweets are coming out from there and they're going viral, it's certainly sending a certain message, I would say, about the state of the Pokemon franchise in terms of games. There's also been some, I guess, useful glitches that have been discovered. As an example, you can jump up mountains if you're facing the opposite direction or backwards, basically. So you'll be able to get to certain areas you're not supposed to, I guess, earlier in the game, which people are already trying to sequence break this thing by throwing a Pokeball across a certain gap, and then you end up in a battle very early in the game. So yeah, Game Freak's gonna have, I'm sure, many more clips posted about their game here pretty soon. One that I thought was really funny, and I tried it out myself. I even posted a short of me showing this glitch off. If you have a second controller linked up to your Switch, you can actually make your main character run faster. It sounds weird, but essentially if you have I had my Switch in handheld mode, and I was running with the Joy-Con in like a diagonal up position, and then you have your Pro controller also synced up, you press that in the same direction, and your character will run fast enough to make it so that Pokemon won't be able to render in time. Which is funny because that's actually the speed I would like to be going in the game. That's kind of been one of my more frustrating aspects to it early in the game, is I feel like I'm just going slower than I was expecting, even when I'm riding around on Miraidon. So that maybe later on in the game, I don't know, I get more traversal options. You know, we'll see all of that. But people have been trying to figure out what's going on here, and there are a couple theories. The leading one appears to be a memory leak, potentially. Like, you can see this over on Reddit. They say Pokemon Scarlet Violet may have a memory leak causing performance issues. This seemed to come out of Centro Pokemon, but what's been discovered is as you play the game, the performance gets increasingly worse. And in order to fix that, so let's say you're 2 hours in and you're like, okay, hold on, something's wrong here. The frame rate's in the low 20s, maybe high teens even. If you back out of the game, obviously save, back out of the game, close it down, reopen it, that actually seems to reset the performance essentially. And if that is the case and it's a memory leak, I would expect that to be addressed in the first patch, although there are questions around if Game Freak will be delivering any performance patches, mostly because of their history with that, with previous titles, but this is so egregious and talked about that I have to imagine they're working on it right now and they're trying to deliver it maybe by I hope by next month, but sometimes patches and going through certification can actually delay certain things, just make it take longer than you would expect. But one other aspect here comes down to the hardware. That's been talked about. Could the Switch 2 maybe run this game better? The answer to that seems to be yes, as people have started to overclock the system in order to try to figure this out. And they have at least achieved a stable 30 frames per second for the most part. The only drawback is because they push the clock so high, the battery life isn't great in handheld mode, so they essentially leave the thing plugged in and it does get pretty warm, and not the ideal scenario for Game Freak to have to do when it comes to the stock Switch, attempting to push different clock speeds up. Unfortunately, however, the overclocking didn't really fix anything with the glitches and all the random weird stuff that's happening in the game. That's going to be up to Game Freak, and if they patch all that stuff out and make this feel like a more complete and polished game overall, especially since I assume they're going to have downloadable content because they've been doing that now with the Switch titles. So if you expect people to stick around and see this as a complete product, you would work to polish it further as we go along. So here's hoping. I actually expect it because of that, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they didn't do too much to fix up performance through patches. We'll see. Hopefully they have something out to us here in the coming weeks. Next up, let's talk about Team Ninja and apparently some reboots for their more popular game franchises, one of which has been dormant for a while now. I think since the Wii U launched, but let's take a look at this slide here and why people got so excited. I mean, you can see it right away. We have two of their more prominent franchises front and center, one being Dead or Alive and the other one being Ninja Gaiden. Now, this was shown off at the G-Star conference that apparently was earlier this week, and it was from Team Ninja head Fumihiko Yasuda, saying that they are confirming plans to resurrect the two dormant franchises. Now, I remember the most recent, Dead or Alive. It did some weird things. They did a lot of like microtransaction stuff that I feel like put the overall fan base kind of off from that one. They even made it free to play at one point. They were very scattershot with that game, kind of all over the place, trying to make it fit into that live service box. But as for Ninja Gaiden, it's been a while. Like we had Razor's Edge, and that unfortunately didn't feel great for Ninja Gaiden. I still think, I know the first one obviously holds a special place in a lot of people's hearts because that was an awesome Ninja Gaiden title, especially when it released on the original Xbox. But Ninja Gaiden 2 for me is where it peaked, and then it kind of fell down a bit for Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge. And I would love to see them just go back to the beginning and reboot the entire franchise and try to set a clear path ahead for it to exist now in modern times with newer technology and expectations around these kinds of games. There is a rumor going around, and it is just that, a rumor, so if anyone's mentioning it's confirmed, it's not yet, and that has to do with, I believe, Nick from Xbox Era saying that Platinum Games is rumored to be working on the new Ninja Gaiden reboot. And I would like to see what Platinum could do with Ninja Gaiden. Obviously, it would be more over the top than Ninja Gaiden 1 or even Ninja Gaiden 2, but hey, Platinum, they definitely take things to the next level when it comes to a lot of the action in their games. And maybe that's what Ninja Gaiden needs to get pushed a bit into over the top territory. I mean, it kind of already was, but like, Platinum Games over the top. So we'll see going forward, but at least for now, it appears we have confirmation that Ninja Gaiden's ready to make a return. Next up, let's talk about Sony and their PlayStation Black Friday sales. These are currently live, and it will be running until November 28th. We can see this posted up over on the PlayStation website. Starting at the top, they do have several games, both digitally and physically, by the way, on sale. You can buy physically on the PlayStation Store, as well as they will have a lot of these deals in place for retailers. So you kind of want to check out both, and maybe you can just kind of go to a store and pick it up. But for digital, I noticed that Gotham Knights is front and center. That game just came out, and it's already marked down at 40% to $42. I know I saw many people who said, oh, it's not 20 yet. I'm waiting for it to get really low in price. So I mean, yeah, I get it. The game itself definitely has some core fundamental issues. But hey, if you're waiting for that discount and you like Batman, there you go. It's $42. Last of Us Part 1 down to $49.69. I saw Gran Turismo 7 also down just under $40. They do have their PlayStation Plus service also marked down 25%, which we talked about that through a recent leak that they would have this sale. So not a bad time to re-up and save some money there. Hardware-wise, they have all the different DualSense controllers just on sale, $25 off. So you can grab a DualSense for $50, and that seems to be everywhere. Same with their headset. That's actually marked down $30. And I saw their controller and their DualSense charging station just $7 off. So what's that make it? Almost $20. I will say the DualSense charging station is very useful. I like mine quite a bit, just to kind of set the controllers in there, let them charge. You don't have to plug anything in for the controller itself, just sort of sits in there. The media remote, I haven't used it much. So there you go. And we'll just quickly scroll through the physical games that they have on sale for directplaystation.com, which will probably reflect a lot of the retailers as well this week. Like Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is $30. They also have that Horizon Forbidden West Collector's Edition that's marked down to $170. So there you go. Hey, Horizon Forbidden West though, $40. That's a pretty good pickup there. Sackboy: A Big Adventure, $20. It's a fun 3D platformer you can play with. Maybe you have some kids or something. That's a good time there. Returnal at $30, Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut at $30, Demon Souls at $30, the Neo Collection, $30. Remember, that's two different Neo games there, so that's actually a good pickup. And then I guess for the collection, I don't know, Destruction All-Stars is $10. But overall, not a bad set of sales from Sony themselves. And I mean, looking at the hardware, the headset being marked down, the DualSense controller, not a bad idea to pick up a second controller or the headset for the first time. I will say, if you're gifting a PS5 to someone or looking for like the stocking stuffer, the subscription service, the PlayStation Plus extra tier specifically, 25% off, and the library that it unlocks. Not a bad way to get people maybe acclimated or checking things out in the PlayStation ecosystem, because there's a lot of value there with how many games unlock. Anyway, there's a link down below in the sources if you want to check these deals out for yourself. Just remember, they do end November 28th. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about something that's probably going to make most of us feel old, and that has to do with Splinter Cell turning 20 years old. That's right, it's been 2 decades since my mind, and I'm sure your mind, was blown seeing that game for the first time on the original Xbox with the stealth gameplay and obviously the lighting and different effects they did with the visuals. This is impressive stuff then, and really looking back on it, it still kind of is with the hardware that they were able to get it on. But we did have an entire video that was released by Ubisoft sort of talking about the franchise and the remake that is currently in development. You can see some of this here, and they also talk about some key aspects that they would be honing in on, which, yes, one part of it was the story, because remember, we saw that job listing that had people looking at this a bit sideways because it mentioned adapting it for a modern audience. But they do say the core of the story, the core of the experience, will remain as it was the original game. So again, we'll see. I'm gonna put off judgment until I see the game exactly what they're doing here and how they are adapting it. We'll find out hopefully in the next couple of years. It's still gonna be a little while, since the only thing that could show us here were different concept art shots, which looks good. They say they're going for a very high quality release, and they're not looking, of course, to make it open world or anything. There is going to be a more linear experience with larger areas, kind of how you'd expect a game with multiple different paths through it would be. They do mention AI engagement and working to improve their reaction and how they would look to attack different situations. For example, if you're spotted, would they round up the other guards and try to search for you? And I mean, the idea of having improved AI for a game that heavily leans into a stealthy Sam Fisher that, by the way, apparently you can play through the game and not have to kill a single person. Like that, all of that wrapped up together in some of the newer technology we have, as they did mention things like better lighting with ray tracing effects. If they really do this and make sure it's in the oven long enough, don't push it out the door too soon, they could have a really, really cool release for Sam Fisher, which is something I feel like they need to do after relegating him to cameo appearances in things like Ghost Recon and cell phone hero shooter game. But after spending about 20 minutes talking about the history of Splinter Cell and some of their future ambitions for the new title, they did say they're going to be going dark for a while to work on the game. So I think it's going to be years before this thing's out, and it probably will be 2 years maybe before we have any actual gameplay or just get a grasp on the direction they're taking this thing in. But I think as long as they stick to the core concept of the game and the story that people really like, and just work to modernize the entire core gameplay, the visuals, all these other things, this should be a big time release, and I'm hoping they do right by Sam Fisher after just messing with fans for the last decade or so. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday. We're asking, will Pokemon Scarlet and Violet become the best-selling Pokemon games of all time? It's roughly 31.5 million to pass Red, Blue, and Yellow. 70% say no, 30% say yes. So we'll get an early indication in a couple of days with the Famitsu sales charts. I'm expecting a 7-figure number from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet on those sales charts at the top. It's tracking ahead of Sword and Shield. By the way, that went on to sell 25 million copies, and basically it comes down to, is all of the talk around the performance, so like frame rate, the bugs, the glitches, is that enough to slow the sales for this game in the long run? Like, could the impression be so bad, first impressions, and the word of mouth spreads, that people just kind of avoid it for now and maybe eventually forget that Pokemon game came out and they move on to something else? I guess it's possible, but I feel like Pokemon's so entrenched right now that, yeah, people will just buy it anyway, and that's just kind of how it is. But hey, we'll find out, as I mentioned, in a couple of days for Famitsu, and then next year when Nintendo releases their initial sales report for the games. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Mag saying, insanely happy Tactics Ogre is selling well. Been a fan of the series since March of the Black Queen. Let's hope this finally lets them continue the story of the series, as it really is quite in-depth and quite good. Also makes me wonder if they would remaster or remake the other games in the series. I have to imagine some of the sales that we're seeing just in the Famitsu charts and probably, I mean, Square has the numbers, but everywhere else in the world probably is giving them a lot of confidence to go back and remaster or remake some of these older, more niche titles. And that's exciting stuff because Square has a vast library of older titles, some of which never went outside of Japan. So I hope they do go down that path. It's not expensive to do this compared to obviously something like Final Fantasy 16. So maybe they do continue that forward. I mean, we see Front Mission apparently all over the place right now, and who knows what else they decide to reach back and grab and attempt a remaster of. Hey, maybe a new Tactics Ogre could also be in the cards. It's definitely an exciting time when it comes to the more nostalgic side of Square Enix right now. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here. Today was Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Do you think Game Freak's gonna come out with a patch here in the next couple of weeks to fix this up? And if you did pick them up, what do you think about the current state of the game? And also, what about the potential for Ninja Gaiden to get a reboot? And would you hand it off to Platinum Games to do it? And Sony with their Black Friday deals, what are you picking up? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.